It's 5:30. I'm calling to order this workshop and public hearing of the City Council of the City of Bandera. It's Thursday, September 10th, 2020. All of our council members are present. The city administrator is present. The city treasurer is present. The city secretary is present, and also the city marshal. Item 2 is a public hearing. The city council will hold a public hearing regarding the proposed tax rate. It's a budget workshop.
Budget.
That's after the public hearing is.
We have a public hearing on the tax rate. It's okay. Well, it's actually. Okay, as you know, the council has sort of settled on the no new revenue rate, which will be a slight decrease in the rate from last year. It will generate no new revenue. It's pretty simple. What was called the effective rate last year. So, if there's public comment.
So for tonight's public hearing, if you would like to speak, please raise your hand and I will call on you one at a time and ask you to please unmute yourself and then mute yourself when you're done. You can raise your hand in the right corner under web controls and it will show me that you've raised your hand.
We'll give it a few minutes, and if no one logs on and wishes to speak in the next, say, 10 minutes, then we'll adjourn the public hearing.
But the current one that we're having right now is irrelevant because it wasn't posted in the paper. So you made us time to adjourn. Do you think?
Mayor Pro Tem Gibson has a point. Since this was not posted in the paper as a tax rate hearing, I believe we should just adjourn the public hearing and move on.
Because we'll have to reschedule it with the proper paper.
Yeah, we only
posting.
have to have one for the tax rate
That's right.
this year, not two.
We have one scheduled for the 17th for the tax rate and for the budget. We can have another quick public hearing on the 22nd prior to adopting the budget. So we'll change the calendar accordingly. Case like that, I'm going to adjourn this public hearing, 5:35. Okay, item 3 is the workshop.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Item 3 is the workshop. Discuss the budget for the fiscal year 2020, 2021. Would you like to update council quickly on the high points of what's changed since we saw this budget a couple of days ago?
Well, not much, just the,
Turn on your microphone.
it's on.
We'll talk through your microphone.
The only things that really changed are the year-to-date actuals. That's pretty much all on that, and then we did add a line item under the utility fund in the administration for the EDC, for the Texas Water Development Board principal of 40,000 as the expense, and there's also one in the revenue that is from the EDC to the utility department of the 40,000. So there's the expense and the revenue side on that one.
Where's that? I'm sorry. What
That's on
page?
page 29 and 30.
And remember, council, this 40,000 is proposed. EDC has not approved the budget, nor have they brought it to council for approval. However, since this is a draft budget until it's voted on, we decided to go ahead and put it in here at this time. And remember too, council, we're to the real meat of this budget after the 17th, when we discuss the desk audits and the payroll situation. So that'll change things a little bit.
Excuse me, please. This is Martha Schwann. I just signed in a couple of minutes ago. I'm having difficulty understanding what y'all are saying. Is there any way to remedy that? Hello?
Martha, are you logged in on a cell phone or on a computer?
Cell phone.
Do you have any problems hearing me right now?
No, that's perfect.
Let me say something.
I can't hear what she's saying from here. Can y'all hear her? I can hear her.
Not very
She
well.
was saying she couldn't hear us.
Well, I know that, but I can't hear her either.
Can you hear the mayor, Ms. Schwann?
Yes, I did.
Okay. We go to mute her back. They're gonna continue and just type a message if you continue to not be able to hear, but we hooked up some new speakers, so you should be okay now. Well, nobody was talking. Maybe she thought you were. Just for the people viewing, nobody is currently talking. Everybody is just reading their budgets. So you won't hear any talking at this time until somebody on council speaks.
Okay, and how do we get a copy of the minutes?
They'll be posted online after they're approved at the next council meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Rebecca.
Jay and Suzanne or whoever knows about this, can you guys elaborate a little bit on how the master plan, possibly the flood infrastructure fund, and then the streets projects are gonna fit into the budget? And you mentioned before that we would have a separate document, but help me understand how that fits into the budget and where we see that money coming out.
We funded the capital improvement project, the streets, which we approved. We funded that through reserve funds. Those are funds called a rainy day fund or whatever you want to call it. But we had $1,700,000 or so that we were not using. It was just sitting in the bank. So council approved moving $500,000 of that into a capital improvement fund. So it is funded strictly by existing funds, by our revenue, our fund balance. So what you should have, now that we've had the engineering has been approved, we should be able to go ahead and budget that for you and give you a separate document for that, but it's not involved in the budget anyway.
So the reserve funds are not in this budget and shown coming out
No,
for that project.
no, reserve funds don't show in the budget. The way we budget only on projected revenue.
And how about, the master plan,
Will be the same way.
same way?
It'll be set up as a CIP or be called a master plan project, and that will also, council will have to dedicate funds from reserve or however they want to do
But
it.
not from the budget.
Correct.
That's good.
Yeah, phase two, I believe, is going to be, did you say about $200,000 in phase two? That's the community interaction and some of the different things that they plan to do. So we've got phase one covered. It's about 25,000 or less. So phase two will be the one that we'll be working on trying to fund.
And so, and I know we have a long way to go with the flood infrastructure fund, and it might not even hit us this coming fiscal year. But will that be handled in a similar way?
It would have to be.
I think we'll handle it pretty much as we do grants, will we not?
But yeah, but I mean, we can set it up as a CIP, we can set it up as any kind of different type of fund. It just will not be a budget fund.
Because you'll notice too, prior years where we've had grants, you haven't seen the grant in the budget. The budget is simply spending what we have in projected revenues. Yes,
So
sir.
traditionally, those type of things are gonna come out of the reserve fund. Right.
Yeah, it's
I wasn't clear on that, so thank you.
the street fund.
Well, that,
Well, the funding of the street project is not coming out of the streets department. If that's what
no,
you're
it's
saying.
coming out of the reserve fund.
The reserve fund, yes, that's correct. But we'll have some few dollars left over from last year's budget that we could move over this year, and a few left from this year we could move over to different places where it's gonna be needed, perhaps in the 5th, should we be approved. We're looking at a pretty big chunk there. Jay and I are meeting next week to sit and talk about just sort of organizing all of our projects and our prospective projects and the ones that have been approved and the ones that are in line for approval, and sort of work out a 5-10 year plan, see how we could get these things done.
And this may be more for another time when we actually are like accepting the bids in for the road, street project. But one big question that came to my mind is, that's a 7-year plan. Basically was the roads that are on that 7th year, even the 5th, 6th, and 7th year. I know it's hard to guess, but what kind of condition are those going to be in come that time? Because a lot of those are just seal jobs, you know, going over and resealing as they sit right now. But 7 years from now, I can't imagine that there's not going to be more in the 2 or 3 year plan. You know what I mean?
One thing that Jay and I talked about 2 years ago when he first came to work with the city was a revolving street project. You start at one end and go to the other. So we'll just have to see what it looks like in 7 years. This is gonna be, the ones that are being rehabbed are gonna be in much better shape. Even after 7 or 10 years, I believe, rather than what we're dealing with now, which is, you know,
That's
not
something I'd like
properly.
to hear from the engineer.
We'll just have to look at it when the time comes. Yes, Jay?
If you start a program like that, you can't stop if you want it to work.
Repeat that.
If you start a program such as that one, you can't stop if you want it to work the right way.
Right.
So even though
Right.
it's a 7-year program, it needs to keep going. When we hit year 8, that needs to turn around and start on our first streets that we started on this year, for example, if they need, you know.
Yeah, what I'm questioning now is 7 years too long.
I don't know. I mean,
Engineers
we
would come in.
can't
I think,
predict the
right.
future, but there'll be
They-
some streets that'll be good, I'm sure. and There's gonna be some that's gonna look pretty bad and need some help.
And I'll say that for the road.
I came up with the 7-year number after working with Jay and Derek, our engineer, with the price of the project. We couldn't have done it in 5 years. We could not have funded it in 5 years. We're not doing this with grants. We're doing it with our reserve funds as well as some budgeted funds as we go along. But 10 was too long. I don't think 10 would have done us any good if we come back to 10 and start all over again. So we settled on 7. Now these numbers can be changed. If it sees we can't, if it looks like we can't fund year 6 or year 5, you only have, say, 300,000 instead of 400,000, then it could be. But remember too, the total for this year is 441,000 for next year. We put aside 5. We have more money to go into that account, and that money doesn't die every year. That money carries over year after year after year. So we're looking at getting a good, healthy start, and that's one of the things that I would like council to consider as we start moving these monies around at the end of the year.
Yeah, and I'd like to discuss further accelerating the program somewhere through some kind of options, which you all will know that better than I do, what options are available out there. Such as loans, because if you look at how much things are going to increase over 7 years and what kind of condition those 5, 6, and 7-year programs, streets are going to be in, it may be worth looking at something such as that.
Again, let's
Especially with interest rates lower.
cross that bridge.
And I don't know when that's the most appropriate time to discuss those things.
During budget
Now
time.
or,
Not
yeah,
yet. Yes, ma'am.
Well, just as it relates to budgeting specifically for this fiscal year, we've kind of got that set in stone. However, any grant opportunities that should come up could work with your idea of accelerating the program if we can find those types of opportunities.
And remember too, that any money that's left over at the end of a budget year, if a budget is not amended and those funds are not put someplace specific, they go back into those reserves, that rainy day fund I was talking about. So it's not like we've lost the money. If we have, I'll just make up a number, okay? Let's say we have $80,000 left from last year. Well, if we don't put that into the fifth, well, fifth is way down the road, I'm sorry.
Any
But
line
let's,
items.
but you know, the master plan specifically, that it'll just go back into the reserves. And then when we need to draw it, we can. It doesn't disappear.
Well, Jane had his hand up. I didn't.
It's all right, we'll discuss it later.
Okay. I have one, budget related question. Related to the postage meter rental and the printing and copying, throughout all the departments is a really high expense. And I just wonder if there was any consideration of going, or if there were a program in place where we could use paperless billing.
A lot of our utility customers actually get their bills emailed to them.
I didn't know that was an option.
Yes, ma'am. And so, that with the bank draft where, the ACH out of the customer's accounts, there's a lot less paper that way as well. So, I'm one of the ones that get my bill emailed.
I don't have my email.
I can set that up for you.
Great.
We can add it to the next utility bill too, to remind people if they want an electronic bill that may, you know, how we do like the bulk trash pickup and that kind of thing. We could add it to the bill and just say, remember, you know, save trees, you can get your bill by email. And
I've had, some consumer accounts where I was actually charged a $5 fee for paper billing because they were trying to go all e-billing. And might not be an awesome way to recoup funds, but
a lot of our customers don't want it because they don't get emails and things like that. But we did push it for a long time. We did add a scanner bar and a electronic payment to the bills last month, I believe. And Laura did a thing today, and we've increased 28% by people paying online just from adding that to the bill. So we're getting there, but a lot of our clientele are not, you know, don't have the resource to get their bill electronically or pay it electronically. And they really like to come in and interact with us to just get out of their house, you know? So, but we'll definitely push it again and see if we can get some more people signed up. But in that expense too, you need to realize it's the folding machine that folds stuff, seals, the postage, 50 cents a letter to every person that goes out. So it's not just like paper, it's also the equipment that we need to stuff those 1,000 envelopes every month and that kind of thing. So that expense used to be a lot higher, and 2 years ago, I think, is when we went from a machine that took up the whole bar to this one, and that brought the expense down. So
Are we just kind of going through this with whatever questions we have?
Whatever strikes your fancy.
Okay.
We've pretty much gone through it, at least there's a give a fun.
Question,
Yes, sir.
page 12 on travel and lodging. This is, for the Marshal's Department. Maybe not here, but maybe Jay or somebody can answer. A little bit of curiosity, and also a little concern too. Anytime I'm looking at things such as training and those type of things, materials that we budgeted for, I always assume or expect that the majority of that kind of money is going to be used. So my concern here is on training, 1550.
So we,
The 2018-19 actual is 5,500. We budgeted 4,500 for this year, and they've only used 1,200. Why is that? And then they don't have anything. They have zero there for budget for this year. Training's like the top of the list for me, in all departments really.
so
There you are.
we combined.
I was listening in my office to make sure that it was all carried through.
Okay.
I'll let Amber answer first. And then I'll
Okay.
jump in.
So the travel and lodging and the training, we combined those two line items into one, and I can inactivate the training after we close this, this year that we're in. So I don't want to take that one off yet.
I'm still kind of confused, and I probably shouldn't be.
So line or 1550 and 1500, we combined the amount together. So when after October 1st, I'm going to inactivate the training and make the 1550 and make that travel and training 1500 at the amount of 7,500. Yes.
Well, it's, I guess, more up to the department head and how they want to actually look at those type of things. But I see importance in breaking that out, because the travel and lodging kind of like goes hand in hand with the training. So if for every $1,000 you're gonna spend on training, knowing about how much you spend per course, the travel and lodging should not be that relevant in coming up with your budget for training. And then you're going to have, so 4,500 for training and 3,000 for travel and lodging. Like I said, that Will should know more about if those are good numbers, accurate, realistic numbers.
Well, this time around, to be honest with you, I didn't know that we were joining them all together until the last budget meeting, but realistically, you know, I can deal with it. Now, we haven't spent a whole lot this time around, naturally due to the pandemic that we're dealing with. A couple of years ago, training is a big expense. It's something we do spend money on, but we subscribe to Police One Academy, which is an online service that it's $1,200 and something a year. They get to do a lot of online training, and we pay a little. It would be $850, but for the extra $400 something, they do all the reporting for us to TCO, Texas Commission on Law Enforcement. So currently, we're getting lots and lots of training right now, lots of hours that they're getting an hour at a time or 4 hours at a time without leaving the city of Bandera. And the training, when you leave and you go and stay somewhere for 2 days, you know, a class is $200. You end up spending $400 on gas and hotel and food. And while it's great to get out of town and do that kind of stuff, you know, honestly, that's one thing that we were kind of ahead of the curve on with this stuff is you can do it while you're here at home in Bandera, and better yet, if you could do it when it's slow on a Monday night and nothing's going on, you can come up here and spend it, because you can pause this stuff.
Okay.
You can spend 30 minutes and you can hit pause and go out and, you know, do some work and come back. So I think that the numbers are fair, and we don't see representatives. We also get $1,200 to $1,400 every year from the comptroller's office for Leo's funding that you see on there, and it's sometimes hard to understand it because it's hard to budget for, because we just get a check, and
Right.
sometimes it's $900 and the next year it's $1,200 or $1,400, and I have to justify, well, how many hours did we? And generally, that's what I'm using that money to pay for this Police One training. But we've been using a lot of our training hours on the Police One stuff, and not because they've canceled a lot of the
So online's been a big factor in
big
this.
factor.
That's good.
And it's great that we already paid for it, so we're not out
Yep.
anymore. But as far as the combining it all together, it's not a big deal, because I like to get a lot more bang for the buck. So if it's something in San Antonio that they can drive over there in the morning, or even if it's several days that they're driving over there in the morning and coming home for, that's great. Or so sometimes it's Georgetown or Round Rock or something like that. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of free stuff in Harris County and Houston, but you have to go to Harris County or Houston, and
Right.
you know, who wants to do that?
That's it. Sounds good. Thanks.
Jerry, I might point out that travel and training are combined in all the departments throughout the budget. I think it's just a matter of deactivating and renaming some of these lines. Is that not correct?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
Okay.
Because I initially panicked when I saw that, and then I started looking at some of the others, went, oh, okay, I understand, we just hadn't gotten it lined out on mine yet.
So what is the accounting significance of combining those as opposed to being able to see the dollars spent on tuition or registration versus how much is going to hotel and food and gas and things like that? What's the relevance of?
Well, in some cases, they are combined, like one of our TWA schools, the hotel training and everything is one lump sum. I mean, there's not, when you sign up, you will stay at that hotel. You will have your training there at that hotel.
Well, that's not always the case though, and that,
No, I'm just-
but for the accounting purposes, and knowing where the dollars are being spent. I'm just wondering why combine those.
I mean, they can be separated, that's,
Well, they are
Yeah.
separated, so why, that's what I'm asking is why go from a more transparent view of where those dollars are going to, you know, pulling those into a lump sum where you can't break it down.
That's more
Isn't
what I
that
was
what you
probably
were
trying to get
asking?
at. That's. Pretty much right.
I mean, I can look it up and see exactly where every dollar has been spent on any of the line items. I mean, that's not a problem, and code gives that to us. So it's up to you guys, what you guys want, how you guys want it, I guess, because, we just figured that it would, a lot of times when we go over the budget on one of them, they'll go ahead and put it into the other one since they're very similar, the travel and lodging and the training. So if they go over budget on training, they'll put it in the travel and lodging just because there's money left over
I
in
gotcha.
there.
Well, I mean, that's a point. I mean, I can understand that. That's what I was looking for, I guess. Why do that?
Or do you want it broken out?
I'm not saying that. I was just asking why. And especially as you said, when you're inputting into that line item, you can go back and break it down.
Yes,
If
ma'am.
someone's curious about it, or if we need to make adjustments in the next budget, we can get those kinds of details.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes, Jerry.
Page 19. Salary. 516, 1,000. You all probably know the answers to these questions just because you were here for last year's budget, of course. But what caused the big increase from 18-19 actual to current?
On the salaries?
Yeah, or am I looking at it wrong? And
Well, the
it seems like
budgeted
a large
amount-
increase.
The budgeted amount for this year is 83,100
Right.
and 81,100 for this coming year.
But I'm comparing, I'm looking at
I
previous
hear
year. The increase, you're talking 30%,
The jump from 18,
about 30% increase.
I'm sorry, I just-
Mhm, go ahead.
The jump from 18-19 to 19-20 was significant.
Okay, 18-19.
Yeah,
Why 18-19 to 19-20? Because in the Parks Department, we're splitting out the, we're not
Public
splitting out
Works
the
Director.
salaries, is that how it went up?
Yes, ma'am, we're splitting all of the employees except for two, 25% out of the streets, the park, the water and the
I'm
wastewater.
remembering now. It hadn't been done like that before.
That always confuses me. Because you have to then know where the breakout from, which without a ledger, you wouldn't know that. So was that an increase in the number of employees? Was it an increase in the number of hours that the current employees worked? What is it?
It's also an increase in people and their salaries. And that, like I said, we split it now quarterly, a quarter for each department, except for one of our employees who only works at the wastewater, so.
I guess I had sticker shock, because it just seemed like a lot more than what I would have expected, not knowing how many hours are involved and how many people you have on, by the way. How many people are on normally, on typical weekend or typical weekend day?
No, this is not the city park, this is the Parks Department.
Seasonal park is broke out separate in a few
Yes,
pages
ma'am.
for the.
It's 517 is the seasonal park, but this is the.
Well, that
Parks
was another
Department.
question I had, why they separated. And a lot of this is because I'm new to this, where you putting people and all that. So can you explain that to me one more time?
Well,
The
our
parks, and then you've got the seasonal park.
Our Parks Department is our everyday employees that work.
Year-round.
Yes, around all of the area. And then the seasonal park is only open for a short amount of time. And so that is a different,
And those are the people that are manning the gate.
yes,
Right,
and
and-
picking up the trash and, yes. They
Okay.
get their own budget, the seasonal park does.
So now instead of one question, I have two. So how many people are figured FTEs? Let's call it FTEs, 40-hour work week. How many FTEs do you have that are working the park? In other words, how many employees does this
It's all the employees in the public
1,000
works.
represent? Huh?
All the employees in the public works except for one.
Yeah, so it's not anybody that works here in City Hall, it's everybody that's at the yard or the yard, because the one that works at the wastewater plant, he's only split between the water and wastewater because that's what he's licensed in.
Maybe I'm slow on this, so I'll ask again. How many people, employees, does this $83,000 represent? FTEs, not number of people. How many hours?
9 employees, I believe.
Based on a 40-hour work week.
Is it
And in the.
It can't be 9 employees at $83,000.
At
How many
25%,
employees?
9 employees.
That's what I'm getting at. So how many employees is that total? One?
9 employees at split up 25% between those departments at 80 hours a year.
Hey, why am I having trouble? I think it is me.
Let me take a shot at this if I may.
Basically 2 full-time,
So our public works department is very small.
be 25 full-time.
9 people.
We have 9 guys. Let's say we have 9, okay?
Yeah.
The salaries for all 9 guys, plus the public works director, plus part of Jay's salary, are split up between streets, parks, water, and wastewater. So they're all added together and split up and divided between those 4 departments. Because we never know from day to day who's going to be where. We don't have a guy that's a water guy. Water guy may be checking a well right now, and he may be over here fixing a pothole the next day or the next minute. So we don't have a way to really track the number of man hours spent for this budget. And that's how we come with the numbers we come to. And I know it's not perfect, but it's as close as we can come in the small department that we have.
But it can't be accurate that way. Wouldn't you agree? You're not, these are like guesstimates at best. And how do you ever determine how many more people you might need, say in the parks versus utilities or wherever else, if you're just evenly dividing this stuff up? I'm not trying to create an issue here, it's just a concern. I've never seen things done that way before. Because typically what you would do is you track your hours in each department. It may sound like a big deal, but it's not when you do it. I can see some kind of logbook that you keep, and whoever worked there that day writes down 2 hours or 2 hours and 15 minutes. And
Jerry, I understand that, but it's not council's purview to change the way that the city does things. Now, you can suggest, we can have a workshop, we can make things different, but we as a council don't get to direct anybody how to do anything or to set policy. So, that being said, this is the best way we have of tracking it.
well, this is more of accounting, so you have accurate numbers. I mean, this isn't anything I'm trying to change, per se. I'm just trying to figure out a way of obtaining better numbers, more accurate numbers that are usable.
Well, that's a
I mean, this
discussion
is-
for some time other than the budget workshop. We could certainly bring that up, but this is not the time that we can solve that issue. What we have to work with is the numbers before us.
Okay, well, I'm not wanting to get into a huge discussion on it over this part either so much right now, but that is a big concern for me. I mean, how would you ever calculate how many employees you actually need for a per se department? And then your overtime increases, how do you determine maybe I need another employee versus continuing to pay overtime? Because that was my next question.
Well,
Why,
then,
why do we have so much overtime in that department?
We might have
Well, if
Yeah.
you're,
kind of hit that.
oh, no, go ahead.
Jill,
If you have 9 employees and you have them split into 4 departments, that's basically 2 and 1/4 employee in each department. So that's 2 people in streets, 2 in wastewater, 2 in water, 2 in parks, and then 1 guy is all 4. So if you know your streets, oh, we need more potholes filled, this and that, that's how they determine it. That's how Martin says, we need somebody else in the park today. It was a holiday weekend. We need 2 people there today and not over here today. I mean, we only talking about 9 employees spread between 4 different departments. So that's not very many to spread out into all these departments that we have. You know, you have 2 at wastewater, you have John and you have Thurman are over there. So that's 2 of your 9. So that leaves the rest of them in those other 3 departments. So when they see that something is lacking in one department, they know, hey, we need another guy on the street or on the this or on the that. So that's the reason that it's split between those 4 departments.
The employees may work in all the different departments in one day,
I
so,
understand that,
I mean, it's,
but they're not keeping track of how many hours. they're
right,
spending
they're
in
not
each
gonna
part.
say, okay, I was at
That's
the
the-
park for 30 minutes and I was over here at the,
That's the part I feel is
for
important.
another 45 minutes, you know. I
Yeah,
mean,
I understand how you're doing it. I'm trying to explain why I don't agree with the way it's being accounted for. Because there's no way you could ever accurately estimate how many positions parks is costing me, how many positions utilities is costing me, and et cetera.
No,
If
but
you're
that
just
would be
breaking it out of you. That's just a way to make it easy. That's not a good way of
well,
accounting.
yeah, but to make
I've
it
never seen it
easy,
done that way anywhere, other than maybe it's common in the government, but
I think every
you
city government does it
utilize
that
that
way.
information. It's important information to have to help you determine where you need more help
But
without just
go ahead.
going
I
like
just
this.
say if you look at it through an accounting or a timekeeping issue, it would be a nightmare to say, okay, I'm gonna clock in for 30 minutes, fill this pothole, clock out, go to the park, clock in to the park for an hour, clock out of the park, go over here to the wastewater plant, clock in, clock out. I mean, that's
Typically not how it's done.
well,
There's a
no,
law,
because most,
it's not clocking in or out, but it's never, that never.
or then you're
occurs.
gonna keep
You have
track of
a
your
log.
time on a,
Yeah, well, it goes,
piece of
I'll give
paper?
you one good example that it's done every day, all the time, and it always has been, in the laboratory. Because you work so many different departments, and the only way that you can budget for each department is to keep an accurate, at least a fairly accurate accounting of how many hours are being spent in micro, chemistry, or wherever. And that's just one type of business that does it. Pretty much most businesses out there track their employees and how many hours they're spending.
I agree. I mean, we've kind of kicked this around over the years, how to get them to
It only takes a second. When you're leaving, right, 2 hours, 2 hours and 15 minutes, you're out, you're done. And you move on. Checklists are
but again,
pretty common in jobs.
we come to accounting though, and we have 4 hours under 10-15,
Mhm.
1,000, 3 hours under 10-16, 1,000. You know, and getting all the hours in the correct line item on the check, and I don't know, I know there's what, you call it jobbing it out in private sector when I was there. And, I don't know how they would accomplish that, I certainly don't know,
You just take and add them all up together and there's the department. It's pretty easy.
well, not their own paycheck.
I don't know that Jerry's talking about doing it for a paycheck
I'm not.
initially. He's talking about, we could adjust the overall percentage numbers in the next year's budget if we had a better idea of
How many
the
hours per year?
percentages that are actually, happening out there.
Okay, what are you gonna do when you have a $16 employee, an hour employee, or a $19 hour employee, and an $11 hour employee working in the same department? How are you gonna average that out?
Because you're not, you're not using it for that purpose. You're not using it to come up with necessarily how much you're spending, say, in that part. That's in some cases another purpose. It's mainly used to determine how much of your labor hours are being utilized in each department.
I
So you
understand that
know where
concept.
you need to direct more people or fewer people or whatever it is.
I understand what you're saying, but,
Yeah, and indirectly, you do use that to calculate your load, your expense wise, that's not your primary purpose of knowing that information.
Yeah, I'm going to. I'm gonna get one real quick.
Mayor,
yes, Tom.
I understand, and I'm trying not to get too involved in this, just try to be here to work with the best. Jerry's got a point. It's not necessary to do this 2-hour thing, 4-hour thing. I believe we should check with some other municipalities. This is, I believe, a waste of time and money. So, we have a lot of small towns around us. We can check with them today and see how they do it. But I believe you've got your public works director. He's going to salary. Does he break his off, Jay?
Yes, his is broke down too.
See, that's a lot of extra paperwork that's not necessary.
I agree to the extent that it's an internal tool we could use to better budget next year.
Yes.
If that's where council's going, I agree it would be a good internal tool if we just get everybody to cooperate and actually record accurately the hours they spend on different jobs.
Well, that's that man's job right over there. That's him,
And
organizing.
it's, even if they're not, you don't really worry so much exact to the minute. You want to just get a real good estimate, an accurate accounting of the hours that are worked there. 5 minutes here or there is not gonna make the difference
Right.
in an FTE. And like I say, it's done all the time. It sounds like a lot of work, but once you start doing it, it's a no-brainer. It's nothing to it, That's how it works when you're walking out of the park. So,
All right, good. Yes, Rebecca.
Jay, I'm on page 31, the water department. The increase in the training budget for this year is there some issue? Are we needing some licensed people
We're
or?
gonna keep upgrading people's license. This year, we was not in a bind by any means, but we will start getting to one if we don't start keeping them up with updated hours and stuff. We can no longer do monthly meetings during this pandemic. Hopefully that'll lift soon. We'll go back to that. But there will be some, probably be online classes, I'm guessing, in the near future, and then we'll have to figure out a way to test. We can no longer test online. It has to be in person now, but they halted that during this problem too. But that is one of the big expenses we're gonna have on training for license.
Thank you for.
Excuse me, this is Martha Schwann. I couldn't understand the gentleman that was speaking as far as the water department goes, because when I get my opportunity to speak.
Ma'am, you can't just speak without raising your hand. If you could raise your hand, and if the mayor wants to call on you, she will. Go ahead. It's a workshop. She can't just,
Who is it?
Martha Schwann.
Yes, ma'am.
I apologize. I'm on my iPhone and there is no way to raise a hand. Plus this thing keeps muting me automatically.
Because everybody in the meeting is automatically muted, you have to raise your hand. I gave instruction at the beginning of how to do that. You can't just unmute yourself and start talking. So the mayor called on you
I
to ask a
apologize.
question. Go ahead.
I'll wait my turn.
Yes, ma'am, carry on.
I think she was just saying that she couldn't hear Jay and his microphone wasn't pointed towards him. She asked if you would repeat the part you said about the water department. So that was about the training and the licensing.
All the employees in the water department and wastewater department must be licensed by the state of Texas. So yearly, we have to upgrade our training, and we have to upgrade license to meet the state's new standards. So we will have more people doing probably online training, and there will be some in-person testing as soon as they release that to us so we can go to those.
Did you have anything else, ma'am?
I was going to ask the question about the calculations between the charges for water and then the charges for sewer. Am I allowed to speak now or should I wait?
Is this Ms. Schwann still?
Yes,
Okay.
She wants to ask about the breakdown in her utility bill. In other words, the rates and how that's broken down.
Okay, ma'am, those rates have already been adopted by the council and will be a part of this budget. And I don't have that information with me tonight, but you are more than welcome to, contact the office. There's no increase in water and there's no increase in wastewater. So those things will not go up on your bill. And at this time, there's no increase in the solid waste trash service.
that was not my question. I know how this is broken down because I talked to the utilities department in late February, early March. My concern is that it boils down to essentially you're paying almost the same for sewer as you are for water. So I wanted to dispute that because, of course, in the summer when water use is higher, I'm speaking for myself, when I'm watering my grass and watering my garden, I'm paying just a few dollars difference in water versus sewer. And I thought that perhaps there would be a better way to calculate this. I have talked to some individuals in Guadalupe and Comal counties where I lived previously, and Comal County calculates your water usage in January, February, and March when it's the lowest of the year, and they average that. So your sewer cost throughout the year is that average off those 3 months, and then you would charge water accordingly to usage. Because I live alone and I am using an astronomical amount of water for sewer according to my bill, and I think we're overpaying sewage.
Ma'am, my name is Rebecca Gibson, and Mayor Shulman asked me to answer on her behalf. She was having a hard time hearing you. So what we're here for this evening is a fiscal year budget workshop. And the topic that you would like to discuss, and I respect your concern and your interest, is just not an item for our current agenda. And as Mayor Shulman said, we had already had a meeting where we discussed and adopted those rates. But if there's something that you would like to request that the council bring back before council as an agenda item for more in-depth discussion, you have the right to request that through an email to the city secretary.
Oh, okay. And who is the city secretary?
Your email, Jill, is secretary.
City secretary at cityofbandera.org. I'll type it to you so you'll have it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead. She's muted.
Moving on. Yes, Jerry.
And she had one.
Oh, was it first?
No, I think my question was answered about the increase in the training.
Look in page 20, 10,516, 5,500 building maintenance. What is that? What would be put in under that budget item?
Anything done to this building per se for replacing lights, replacing the door, floor, something like that.
Painting? So general maintenance.
Yes, sir.
700, this is parks department, right? Yeah. And,
Wait, sorry, where are you? Oh, parks, okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what buildings would that fall under? Is that the building out in the park?
Yes, sir, it'd be like the restrooms at
The
the car.
bathrooms?
Yes, sir.
We had $2,500 budgeted, used $702 of it. Why not more?
Wanna spend more?
Why have you not spent more? I know that's a strange question of that.
I don't know that answer right now without getting with Public Works. I know,
Very similar to training, I think things such as materials that is budgeted for, maintenance that is budgeted for. That's one budget item I expect that the money would be used. Pretty much all of it, and that would be one item that would be not a bad thing to come back and request more money for. If it's actually being utilized properly. Because, for example, I mean, I can think of several things, and I'm not picking here, I'm just kind of throwing things out there, food for thought, I guess you can call it. I can see several things down there that could be done. As simple as painting. They're not in terrible shape, but they could use some things. But more importantly, it's like the floors. The floors in the older bathrooms, they're bare concrete. Terrible way to try and keep something clean. You can go over with the new elastomaterial, whatever they call it, the rubberized floors. I put some down in some of my buildings, and makes a world of difference. Main point I'm trying to make there is of all items that typically you want to stay under budget on, I feel strongly that those type of items you ought to be using, you ought to actually be using the money that's being given. And I mean, that relates to another area I had concern too, that I asked about last meeting, was the street materials. You know, why we use so little of the street materials when we got a lot of road issues out there.
we over purchased a lot of material prior year. And it has not been spent exactly. We budgeted for a large amount, but they have not had to purchase more. Now, one of the things that they were hoping for, and I think I was too when I come here, is if we could get some equipment and start using it for that. Right now, we have absolutely no equipment as far as road material equipment. We don't have a lay down machine, you know, or we don't have an emulsion machine. So we thought about trying to rent one. That was not feasible. We couldn't afford it. And for what we budgeted now, I think it's 35,000 if I remember right, or 30,000.
45.
But that would be, yeah, for this.
Oh, for this coming year,
Yes.
35, that's correct.
That 30,000 probably would not even do a whole lot of block. But what we're hoping to do is, now that we've started this program, we have that 30,000, 35,000, whatever it might be left in the year, we can move that over into that project to help with that also. We had the equipment, be a lot better, we can't afford the equipment.
I want to point out to council on page 26, we're going to have to be trimming some of this budget back. This current budget, the way it's written right now, with the projected revenues and our estimated expenses, we're $44,180 over budget. So we're going to have to begin to cut someplace. And Jay and I have not had a chance to really sit down yet. We plan to spend next week really looking at this thing and future funding and that sort of thing. So keep in mind as you're discussing the budget that we're going to have to make some cuts. And this is just in the general fund.
Okay.
And that may possibly happen through salary and overtime after we have a meeting.
Very possibly, we don't know how that's going to come about. But also, if I'm going to call to your attention on page 37, the utility fund is to the good by $149,497. So It's difficult to move the money from one fund to the other. It's not impossible, but Jay and I were talking about a possible, street use fee from utility fund to general fund, so we'll get back to you with more of that stuff if we get some plans here.
Motion to adjourn?
Rebecca's making a motion to adjourn. Do you have a second? Rosie seconds. Discussion. The reason for the motion is we have an EDC meeting coming up,
Oh, okay.
so.
It's like that.
Okay.
Two more days.
Okay. So, before we adjourn, we have the EDC, meeting. But please, take the time this next week. Jay and I are planning on sitting down. Y'all come and sit with Jay or me or with, Amber, whoever can best answer your questions. And with that being said, any further discussion? All in favor? All in favor, none opposed. 6:30.